Hello, thanks for joining me, astrologer Patrick Arundell, for your July monthly forecast for the Sun or the Ascendant. If you're new to my channel, I'd be delighted if you would subscribe or click on the like button. Also, if you want to download your free natal horoscope, see the link beneath this video and discover all your natal positions. Of course, if you want your 12-month forecast and character analysis and get 30% off with my special offer, please also see that link. And finally, if you want to sign up for your free daily horoscope, which will go through to your device each and every morning, please also see that link too. But that brings us to this month. So what does July hold in store? Hello Sagittarius and welcome to your monthly horoscope for July. This month begins with the Sun in your sector of transformations, the 8th house. This can also see you in a pragmatic way, thinking about your longer term finances, business affairs, and where you share things very closely with other people. Mercury, the planet of communication, is in your sector of relating still, but Venus and Mars are in the most beautiful part of your scope, the 9th house. And for you, this is really symbolic because Venus and Mars together, closely together, for much of this month are in your sister fire sign of Leo. They love being here. They like to really show off, draw attention to them, but the position of Leo in your solar horoscope is house 9, which is very much in keeping with the energy of your own sign. So this is about travel, it's about adventure, independence, the big picture, knowledge. It's very, very dynamic. And because the two of them are so closely aligned, the chances are that they're going to draw an awful lot of excitement and stimulation your way right throughout this month. But also, on the 2nd of the month, there is a quarter moon in the sign of Aries, which of course is also your sister fire sign. Now, Aries energy for you is the 5th house. This is where you want to demonstrate your talents, but it's squaring with the Sun in the 8th house where you're most invested. This could, in the following week, bring up some kind of dimension around a romantic situation, particularly if you feel that someone's being very clingy. Because Mercury has been in retrograde recently in June and only came out of shadow on the 26th of June, it's still in a bit of a muddle at the start of this month in its relationship with Neptune. This is a repeat. It happened before, and because of the retrograde, it's come in again. Mercury thrives on clarity. So what you're wanting to do in the 7th house is keep the lines of communication open. Now, Neptune's in the 4th house, which is very much about emotion, about feelings. Now, being a Sagittarius, sometimes you can be very quick to move on to the next exciting new interest or phase or episode of your situation. You don't usually spend too much time navel gazing. But Neptune has been encouraging you to do precisely that since 2012. But it can be a very mystical planet, it can be very healing, it can be very sacrificing. But its right angle to Mercury can be darn right confusing. So if there is a relationship dimension that you're unsure of at the start of this month, just give yourself permission to let things unfold a little more before you make any binding decisions. Because with Venus and Mars together in your 9th house, breaking out and doing something much more freedom-loving, which is very much in keeping with your basic nature, is something you may go for if you feel a relationship isn't working for you. And if it isn't, and it's time to move on, then absolutely that's the right thing to do. But if you're moving forwards into a newer, freer part of your situation based on information that's not quite right, perhaps something that somebody has said, not necessarily because they've got your best interest at heart, important to try and unpick any emotional complexities before making any firm decisions. But despite that, in the first 10 days of this month, the Sun does forge a really, really incredibly exciting link to Uranus. Uranus is in the part of your scope to do with work and obligations and where you show sacrifice and help others. With the Sun in the 8th house, this can be a fine time for you to be very imaginative in terms of your financial management. Taking the less trodden path can actually work out for you really well. So if you want to innovate or do something that's different, particularly if you're involved with technology or business or entrepreneurial shit, you can really take a step forwards. But equally, if you're not involved in those things, but you want to make the most of the resources you have got, but in a fresh way, this is a fine time to be reanalyzing your affairs. And someone who's a professional, an expert, may give you some new perspectives that can be really very helpful. Now on the 10th, there is a new moon in the 8th house. Where you're binded, invested and very, very happy, it could be that you and a partner go on an adventure together from that point. Where you're much less happy, this may be where you decide over the following month to bring something to a close. Because the 8th house is not just about transformations, it's about where we can end things that aren't working. It can mean that that's then followed by a new beginning. So very, very deep stuff. And having the new moon in Cancer, which of course is a very feeling, emotional sign, is pushing you to get in touch with something that perhaps isn't quite working, or to invest in a situation which is, because it feels right, because you may feel that your natural freedom-loving nature isn't being compromised by the investment in that business adventure or that personal relationship, because it just feels so comfortable. You can thrive, you can be your freedom-loving self because someone or a situation is letting you be the perfect person you want to be. Now, it's also true that on the 11th, Mercury moves to catch up with Cancer. It's not its best transit, to be honest, Mercury through the sign of Cancer, because it gets watered down here, whereas Mercury, as I said, thrives on clarity. But having said that, for you, it's very good for business. It's good for research. If you need to find out information, this is a good time to take deep soundings, and your analysis can be rewarded in time. The 17th, however, sees a quarter moon in the sign of Libra, which for you is very much your sector of friendship. So whereas earlier in the month the quarter moon is about feeling fettered by a romantic relationship that isn't working well, this one could be more about a group of people. If there's politics and you really are not wanting to get involved in all this stuff, Venus's alliance with Mars is really seeing you wanting to be excited by new opportunities, new situations, and that could mean fresh people coming in, and you may walk away from any kind of group dynamic that's heavy, backbiting, that kind of stuff. The 22nd, however, sees the Sun glide into your sister fire sign of Leo. Now, the Sun loves being here more than any other zodiac sign because it governs the sign of Leo. On the same day, Venus climbs right to the top of your scope, the 10th house. But also, the square between Uranus and Saturn, which has been creating quite a lot of tension for you, nervous stress, really since the second week of January, that starts to ease because Saturn in its retrograde is inverting inside the exact square, or at least within 3 degrees. And I think that's going to be something you really appreciate. And if you want to punch forwards and achieve your goals and be more ambitious, it's your people skills that are going to be just as important as your innovative ideas in the latter part of this month. The full moon, which occurs on the 24th in Aquarius, is a classic one for you, really, because it's in your 3rd house of everyday communication. The Sun's in the 9th house, very much in keeping with your sign, the big picture, philosophy, spiritual realities, travel, higher education. So this full moon suggests that if something's a bit out of kilter, perhaps, for example, you're being very idealistic about widening the scope of your life, you still need to make sure that the everyday stuff works. Pay attention to that. If, however, you are finding that someone close to you is resistant to this big picture that you're evolving, you're breaking out in some way, it's such a theme this month, there could be a little bit of a tense conversation to be had at the end of the month. But with your ruler Jupiter moving into Aquarius again on the 28th in retrograde, you can find the right words as long as you can marshal the patience. On the 28th, however, Mercury joins with Leo, and that's terrific. This really is another asset you can deploy this month to move on in your life, to bring about a much greater sense of adventure and excitement. The 29th brings Mars right to the top of your scope, joining up with Venus. But Mars here for the following 6 weeks can make you much more authoritative, much more self-confident. But I feel some way or another something has to change in your situation this month, Sagittarius. The status quo is just not going to work for you. You want to bring more variety, more spontaneity, more stimulation, more change. You want to encounter new, fresh situations, different cultures, different people, different knowledge. You need a big charge of new, exciting energy. And it can be one of the most gratifying months of the whole year, but it may mean that some things will need to make way for this new dawn that is evolving for you.